Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Motor City Mad Mile Show. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Mad Mile. Why am I wearing this USF shirt in Tampa? I'll tell you why, folks, okay? I'm sending a bunch of prayers to my people out in Tampa. I am a graduate of University of South Florida. I know they're bound to get hit pretty hard by Hurricane Milton. So my deepest prayers goes out to all the people in the Tampa Bay area. Part of me still is there. I work for the Tampa Tribune out there, and I learned a lot about this industry there. So prayers to everybody, and I hope you guys are safe, and we'll be able to talk to some of my closest friends in the not so distant future. With that said, Wednesday morning, the Wednesday evening show is George Icorn, my co-host.
Good to be here, Scott. And yes, all our prayers and thoughts go with all the Floridians and in this time of stress.
And Jeremy Ballrick, my second co-host.
Great to be here. Glad to talk some sports with you, gentlemen.
Very good. All right. Well, let's start with the Detroit Tigers. They defeated the Cleveland Guardians 3-0, marking the second straight shutout. And they pulled this trick in 2013. Game one, loser Tyler Holton got a save after he was hit hard on Saturday. I think he gave up like 4 runs and got the loss, but boy, he got a save today. AJ Hinch knows how to work his pitchers and keep confidence. There was a record crowd at Comerica, 44,885, the largest in park history in 25 years. The Guardians have now gone 20 innings without scoring a run. The Tigers used 6 pitchers. AJ Hinch is making me think of pitching in a different way, in ways I never thought I would. I was grown up with the complete game, and AJ Hinch is making Adler Doubleday turn over his grave. Another interesting side note: Parker Meadows has now hit safely in all 5 postseason games, the first Tiger to do so since Al Kaline 1968. I set the table. George Icorn, what's on the table?
Oh, well, a lot's on the table, and Detroit hopes to sweep that table tomorrow. Game 4 of the series will be tomorrow around 6 o'clock. It starts. Just an incredible job. Again, they take every at bat, every pitch, every single element of that game is telegraphed as much as they can. And by that, I mean, you got a manager, you got a pitching coach, you got a hitting coach, you got all these guys that are all on board and they take everything so seriously, which they should. But I mean, I've never seen a man get into so much intricate details as AJ does. That being said, things are working right. All his moves seem to be paying off so far. Not all of them, but the most of them, enough to win. It's interesting you said about the shutout innings because prior to Detroit scoring with Kerry Carpenter's home run the other night, they said that the Tigers hadn't scored in 17 straight innings. And then, of course, Kerry hit the game-winning home run. But I'm telling you, pitching is great. Both these teams have the best bullpens. Cleveland's got the best bullpen probably in Major League Baseball, but Detroit's right up there too. So it's an incredible series, and obviously the fans are hooping and hollering in downtown Detroit.
Jeremy, go ahead.
Man, I'll tell you what, the scene was electric. I didn't get to watch it very much because I was at work, so it was between cars. But the Comerica was rocking almost. It seemed like it was almost as loud as Ford Field during the playoffs last year. Kudos to the fans because that's not a dome stadium. It's not made to hold the sound in, and that place erupted where you could almost hear them drowning out the announcement.
Well, one thing about Comerica Park, they haven't held a playoff game in what, 10 years? They haven't won one in 11. I mean, they're diehards. They've been waiting a long time for this moment. And even AJ Hinch said once they left Progressive Field that looking forward to playing in front of our home fans. These people realize that they started this whole thing on the road. At the Houston Astros, they were on the road for the wild card series, 1 and 2. And of course, they started with the Guardians. This was their first home game in what, 5 games? And now they get another opportunity tomorrow. It's anybody's guess who's going to be their pitcher. But I'm going to say this as I reiterated at the top of the show, okay? And that's this: Abner Doubleday would turn over in his grave if he ever saw pitching like this. And another guy I want to allude to is Kevin Cash. He's a guy that I saw, using the opener thing, but he's looking at this as holy moly. AJ Hinch is taking his openers to a new level. He really is. Kevin Cash, I'm wondering what is he doing, but man, the whole world is seeing something different that nobody could have ever imagined before. So, George, tell me about a couple of other players you think are standing out so far in this Guardian series.
Well, you had mentioned at the outset, of course, Parker Meadows. I mean, he's done a hell of a job, being able to hit safely in 5 straight playoff games now. He's doing a really good job. They got some help today from Torkelson finally. He got his first hit of the series and drove in a key run. And of course, Riley Green he's just such a he's a budding superstar. I think this guy's really got his game together, and it's good to see him with a hit or two. But look at Jake Rogers, the catcher. I mean, he's all year he's been hovering guys around the 195, 200, and his batting average has been low, but boy oh boy, he calls a hell of a game. He's a great defensive catcher, and he knows how to hit, and he hits timely when it counts. And so you just got to leave him in the lineup. That guy's just tremendous, and they will, of course. But I mean, everybody's contributing a different day. Matt Vierling contributes, and I was just Colt Keith hasn't had a really good series, but he's done good in his rookie year as well. So they're getting this help from all different angles, which is really, really a sign of a good team and a champion team.
So, George, you have a homework assignment. I'm going to make sure you follow this if it means I have to hound you from here all the way to Alaska. Your homework assignment is to go to Chad Crunk, the Tigers media guy, and say that I'm eternally thankful that he got me Jake Rogers and nobody knew anything about him. And that when I come up to Lakeland this spring trading, what I'm going to do under the MLB credential system and they want to know what I'm looking to do, I'm going to put his name inside of my coverage plan. AJ, rather, Chad Crunk, work your magic again and find me a couple hidden gems. And you make sure that when you do see him at some point, you mention that word for word, even if I have to text you, because I will put that in there. I have had so much respect for Chad Crunk. I even told him about it when I was up there covering the Marlins and the Tigers game. So, because the MLB credentialing system requires you to state the reason why you're going to go out there and cover it. But when you got a guy like Chad Crunk leading you in the right direction. I've always said I don't need a big superstar. I don't mind it if someone falls my direction. I know, Jeremy, you haven't been exposed to that as much as we have, but I don't need. I'll take whatever players I can get, and this is a teaching moment for all journalists out there. But if I run across a hidden gem, you feed into what the PR guy's telling you. Maybe you just might want to listen, which leads me up to this. Okay, lessons from the microphone. I'm going to turn to you in a moment, Jeremy. Okay, my book out there, published in November, talks about old school media versus new school media. One of the things I talk about is making friends, okay, with your PR people and building relationships. I think that's one of the things I mentioned the most. Build relationships. You can get this book here over at Amazon, Kindle, Barnes and Noble, and a few other places. But and George obviously wrote the foreword for it. But the whole thing about this book when I wrote it was to educate the young kids that are getting in it, how it used to be, and a lot of the older folks that remember what it was and what it is become now. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm an actual genius on this subject, but I'm going to tell you I'm adaptable enough to want to take on challenges to utilize the real resources that are available. If you would have told me Zoom calls were something we'd ever deal with, no way. But then again, all you have to do is hit COVID-19, and that mandated the use of having to do them. So, folks, if you haven't gotten it yet, you can get it at Amazon, Kindle, Barnes and Noble, and it's a lot of good information. I talk about making sure you get it right, don't get it first. So, Jeremy has it, George has it. With that said, Jeremy, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you very much for allowing me to get that book promo in there. What are your thoughts about some of the players that stand out? And of course, we have Game 4 tomorrow. I believe that's at 6:08 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll talk about the time in a moment. But give me some other observations, Jeremy, okay, about what we're seeing with the Motor City Kitties.
We're getting it done with bullpen players. Think about what you're talking about, what happened today. That win today meant more to the Tigers than I think it would have meant if the Indians won. Because remember, Indians still have 2 more home games, right?
Well, no, they don't have any home games. It's the Cleveland Guardians.
Or Guardians,
I'm
Indians,
kidding with
whatever.
you. No, but you know what though? Thanks for giving me the idea. It actually might be pretty good. So 6:08 p.m. 10
Yeah,
10
game
Tigers
five.
game.
Game
Yeah.
five would be in Cleveland if there is a game five.
Right,
Right.
but she's talking about tomorrow night at 6:08 p.m. So go ahead, continue.
So if we can close it out at home and get this series over with, and our opponents are still going because the series ends up knotted up, why not put Tariq Skubal in? Because you're talking about a Sunday or a Monday start. They put your most dominant guy that shut down the entire lineup in.
You know, Jeremy, I breathe you. I see your point, but that doesn't. But AJ Hinch won't do it. He wants him a normal rest. But you know what? I'm sure a lot of people would like to get it over with, but I believe that you have to hold him out to game five. But you're not probably the only one that's thought about it, and you won't be the first, and you won't be the last one to think about it as well.
I
Okay.
just know if it gets to game five, it better be Skubal because that's win or go home.
Well, it is going to be school, Jeremy, because he's going to be on 6 days rest. Okay. Speaking of which, to our next segue, the Red Wings opener is tomorrow. The game is being pushed to 8 p.m. Tigers game will start at 6:08. So George, we know right now that Town is active. I think it's a shrewd business move by the Red Wings because you know you got the Tigers and the Red Wings down there, and you never know. You might end up getting them. You may have a double header tomorrow night with some of these fans that want to buy tickets to see both of them, depending how it goes. So, but what are your thoughts about the Red Wings cooperation? Is really what we're looking at.
Yeah, we've seen this happen before where the Red Wings, especially not the Red Wings, but the Tigers and the Lions have adjusted. Well, the Tigers mainly have to adjust sometimes when the Lions are home. But this is a unique situation because the same man and his family, Chris Ilitch, owns both teams. So to me, it was a no-brainer getting permission, obviously from the Pittsburgh Penguins and from Commissioner Bettman, to move that game to 8:05 from 7:05. It's not going to totally alleviate the parking problem. And I'll tell you why, because there are a lot of activities outdoors for both of these teams, street parties and things like that, and people visiting nightclubs and restaurants and such. So even though they're going to be 2 hours apart, there's going to be a lot of competition for the parking places and the parking decks and all that fun stuff. But it's a good problem to have. It's a good problem to have because the Detroit Tigers, nobody expected them to be conflicting with the Red Wings opening night. So I'm really thinking that it's going to be a fun time downtown, but boy, it's going to be crowded. Plus, you got the people that work downtown that are not staying that want to get out and go back home to watch these games. So traffic will be crazy, but hey, it's a good problem. And you're right, Scott. I'm so glad that the Red Wings and the NHL moved that start.
Well, I mean, we talk about traffic, George. Let's get real here, okay? You know, we just held the NFL draft. If there wasn't a bigger traffic situation than that, explain to me what there is. I mean, the NFL draft. I mean, Jeremy, you know, you experienced it with us. You know, you and Candy had to do the lion's share of the driving because I was under the weather. But downtown Detroit is equipped to handle it now than they were years ago. But with that said, Jeremy, pick it up from there.
Man, I just love what the Red Wings are doing. I think it's great that they're reaching out and doing everything they're doing with the public. And this should be a year that we should be happy to be a Red Wings fan again because they were so close last year. As a matter of fact, with the in the month of March, weren't they ahead by like 8 points in that last playoff spot and then fell
Right.
apart?
It
And
wasn't that big. That wasn't that big a lead nowadays. But
I know that they had it was less than 10, but I know it was more than 5. They were ahead, and they wasn't anybody close at the time, is what they were talking about. That they should have been able to cakewalk into the playoffs. Well, we found out that doesn't happen. You know why? Because teams like to play spoilers. When you get in that point where you're on the cusp of making the playoffs, everybody who doesn't have a chance wants to be that guy to knock you out because it makes your team look better when you've had a bad year. And that's what happened. We lost to a lot of bad teams in that stretch. We lost to a few good teams,
Yeah.
but we beat a few good teams too. So, you know what was really sad about that?
What's
The
that?
Pistons, who only had 14 wins, had one more win than the Red Wings in the month of March.
Scary thought. What are you trying to do? Turn this into The Exorcist? Seriously?
Hey, I got one out of you. I must be doing something right.
Yeah, you're. Yeah, you really did. Seriously? Well, now you got two. So everybody knows now here on the Motor City Man Mouse show that if I get two seriouslys and two reallys in, we're having a good show. We're having a good show, anyways. I mean, that's why I got these two guys on tonight, anyways. But I think one of the problems with the Red Wings encountered last year was Alex Lyons is not a number one frontline goaltender, and they asked him to do an awful lot more than he was able to do. I'm gonna tell you, without Alex Lyons, this team would have been out of it way sooner than that. He really is. So I'm
Yeah.
glad he's part of the goaltending mix. It'll be interesting to see how everything plays out with the new goaltending group that they have. I know James Reimer was recently released by Buffalo, and now Anaheim has picked him up. So but yeah, let's go back to the cooperation though, Jeremy. But with the Red Wings and the Tigers, obviously both owned by the Illiches. But regardless, this is a situation where you have cooperative. But when you think about the fact that the Lions and the Tigers have stacked long playoff droughts, and maybe the Red Wings will follow suit as well. This is a pretty good year, and it'll only get better as a lot of these younger players start to develop.
Here,
Absolutely. Absolutely. The players are there and they've got a lot of talent, these players that they've drafted. The moves have been made. There's good moves so far, but there's more growth opportunity especially for the Tigers as well.
Well, I mean,
and
Steve, go ahead, Jeremy.
you were mentioning the other team that we don't like to talk about because they haven't been much to talk about lately. But that coach that we poached away from Cleveland, if you look at what he did with Cleveland, it is what we needed here for the Pistons too,
Right. Yeah,
because
J.B.
he
Bickerstaff.
coaches defense.
Right.
And you're already seeing it this preseason. We out rebounded the Phoenix Suns in an 8-point loss. We had 44 rebounds to their 38. We had 11 offensive rebounds to their 8 and 33 defensive rebounds to their 30. That is a sign they're trending in the right direction. What they do need to work on still is the ball control. They had way more turnovers. So if they can fix that turnover thing with playing better defense, what would be the how crazy would the city of Detroit be if they had all four teams make the playoffs in one year?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath on that. But you know what, though, Jeremy, you do bring up an interesting point, and I'm going to really get to it right now. I don't watch many NBA preseason games. This one happened to be on ESPN against the Milwaukee Bucks. Forget about rivalry with my significant other, and I had nothing to do with it. I figure it's one of the few times I'm ever going to see this team all year, anyhow. But I was impressed, okay, with a lot of the players that they brought in, the energy, and JB Bickerstaff is a good coach. He does preach defense. I don't remember the last time the Pistons had a defensive-minded coach. Now I understand that I'm not feeling better that good these days. I get it, but that had nothing to do with the fact that defenses were allowed the Pistons to win championships. And Larry Brown did it well, and Chuck Daly preached it. And as a result, you got 3 titles to show for it. As for Steve Eiserman, he's on the thrust of getting this team where he wants to go. I'll be curious to see how the goaltending holds up. But I can tell you one thing. This is just my belief. If they don't get it done this year under Derek Lalonde, I do believe that they will be looking for another coach after this year. That's just my personal opinion. You guys are free to follow up on it if you want to.
Oh,
Well, I mean, he's been given a few years opportunity. I would not suspect that he would fall on his sword and to say it's his fault, meaning Lalonde. So, yeah, the only way they would get rid of him obviously would be if they should belly up and just tank and not make the playoffs. Now, that being said, Eisman has been fairly loyal to coaches, but not always when he was down in Tampa. And the thing is that there's a lot of other veteran coaches out there, and possibly he would want to reach into that. But those guys are a little bit older. Jared Gallant and Quinville, those guys come to mind. But I'll tell
Right.
you one thing though is I think Lalonde, he does have good locker room skills, even though he's not the best speaker to the media after games, but he's got good camaraderie, I think, with his players. And it just, I want him to succeed. But you're right, Scott. If he can't succeed and they miss again, everything could be on the line.
Yeah.
There,
I 100% agree with this because if they fail this year, isn't this his third season now? The
oh yeah,
second season, they were looking
third.
like they were trending towards a playoff team and fell apart at the end of the year. And there was some questionable line changes and some questionable personal personnel decisions within who went on the ice. But at the same time, Patrick Kane was a big reason why we got to that point because once he got healthy and started playing, he was a big help to the Red Wings. And I love the fact we brought it. Didn't we bring him back again this year?
Yeah, yeah, he's coming back this year.
2-year
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah, it was a 2-year deal. That's what I thought. I thought it was a 2-year deal, but I didn't want to. Like I said,
Yeah.
I pay attention, but I don't pay attention when it comes to that stuff because my focus usually is in the NFL and the Lions. But at the same time, I like to be well rounded enough that I can actually talk about it and not sound like a blabbering idiot.
Well,
No,
you're
you're
not
fine.
actually. For a guy that I once looked at as a blabbering idiot, you're actually making sense these days. You've come a long way. I'm proud of you, Paul Rex. I'm telling you. That's why you made the big show here with George and I. Okay.
And I appreciate it. I
So,
appreciate
all
the
right.
acknowledgement as well.
Okay. Well, good. Then we'll acknowledge what your strength is since you had to work on two other weaknesses, and then we'll talk about the Lions traveling to Dallas to face the Dallas Cowboys. There's a watch party going on at Ford Field. Mainly, the big question is right now is, do you think the Lions are going to pull a W out of this one, Jeremy? We're going to start off with you.
Well, with Lawrence being on the IR, Micah Parsons more than likely will not play with his high ankle sprain because that takes 3 to 6 weeks
Right.
to recover. They lost Tyler Guyton, also their starting left tackle versus the Steelers. So they're going to have a backup left tackle. Look for them to do like they did versus the Bucks when the backup left tackle was in, and move Aiden Hutchinson to that side to give him a little more leeway and more chances to sack that guy known as Dak Prescott, which coincidentally he set two NFL records on Monday night. One very good and one you don't want mentioned. The
Okay.
first one is he threw a touchdown in 2 days within the same game because of the delay of game, because he threw a touchdown to start the game and he threw a touchdown to end the game. But at
Okay.
the same time, at 12:05 a.m.
All right.
Monday morning, he threw his second pick of the game. So he threw a pick in 2 days within the same game as well. He might be the only NFL QB to hold this record for a very long time.
Yeah, I don't drink the Kool-Aid with Dak Prescott. I remember when I was covering the Jacksonville Jaguars and they were playing the Dallas Cowboys, so we threw a crucial pick at the end of the game. And yeah, I was pulling for Jacksonville. I didn't care, but it was a good win for the Jaguars at the time. And I know that if you if you want a key interception, you can go to Dak Prescott and find it. All right. So let's talk about the watch party, Jeremy. You said you're going to be going to it. Is that correct?
Yes, one of my fans, Trace Hacker, uh, she's a vet as well who served over there in Afghanistan. Thank you for your service if you're watching tonight.
Okay.
Uh, she said, "Hey, the seat is available next to mine. You want to go to this like we did down to camp?" And I was like, "Yes," emphatically. And so that's my birthday present to myself because I didn't have time to look up and buy these tickets. So I'm going to give her the money for it because how often do they do these things? This is the first one, right? The first away game watch party they've had in a long time, other
Yeah.
than I'm talking about regular season.
Oh, I know.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
Well, come on, Jeremy. Wait a minute. Seriously, seriously, you got those out of me. But I don't just go out there with these seriously just to premeditate what I'm going to say to get my.
no, I'm
You're,
just
you're,
saying,
wait. Let me finish because I want to interrupt you this time because you deserve it. This is no typical regular season game, buddy. This is the Dallas Cowboys.
I know a place where we've had struggles winning, and everything's lining up. Frank Ragnow's returned to full practice.
Yeah,
Brian Branch is at full practice after dealing with this concussion and the illness that held him out last game. Uh, Christian Mahogany is back working out with the trainers. Broderick
right.
Martin had his 21-day active to make the active roster activated today as well. So these are all very good signs that we're getting healthy at the right time. And everybody was worried about the torn pec with Frank Ragnow. As
Yeah.
soon as I read it was a partially torn pec in grade 1, it was said it could heal in as little as a week. I was like, oh yeah, he's playing in Dallas. I said that as soon as I read the
All
report.
right. Yeah, I'm sure. Well, let me tell you, from
And
my
this is one of those 4 games that Dan Campbell said we circled as a revenge game this year.
yeah,
Because while we're the hunted, we're still hunting 4 games. And those 4 games, as much as after what happened on Thanksgiving, It's at Green Bay. It's at Dallas. It's at Seattle. Mission accomplished on the first one,
Right.
and the last one is at San Francisco.
Well, let's face the reality. They didn't have a kicker. That's why they got Jake Bates out of the United Football League. So at least you don't have to worry about Dan Campbell going for every fourth down on the planet. Number two, didn't I hear? Correct me if I'm wrong on this. Okay, didn't Frank Ragnow push Campbell into a wall to let him know he's ready to play? And he's feeling pretty good.
He did that after the Seattle game with the torn pec.
Oh, all right. Well, whatever. I knew
He
there's
wanted
some.
to play. He did that after he tore it versus Seattle. He was
Okay.
or he didn't play in Seattle. It was Arizona. He was like, yeah, I'm healthy enough to play, and he pushed him back.
I knew there was a connection to it. I just didn't
Yeah,
know when it happened. So
yeah, it was
bear in
after.
mind, though, I live in South Florida. You guys are closer to it than I am, although I do read up a lot because I have to, in order to keep what we do going, continue.
But while we're on the subject of the Lions, I do have something I do want to announce that is very cool
What's that?
because Jared Goff is the first quarterback to ever go 18 for 18 in a
Yeah.
game. His jersey was entered to Canton today for Monday Night Football last.
Oh, no kidding. Good. I'm glad you brought that up. Good
Yeah.
stuff. All right.
So
Good.
Taylor Decker got it from week one because he had that perfect game versus the Rams where he didn't allow a sack from Jared Verse or Braden Biskey. And now Jared Goff. So that's two jerseys in 1 year that has been put on display in the Lions section at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. How great is this?
Well, it's great that you brought it up. All right, George, go ahead. Give us some Lions take on the game against the Dallas Cowboys.
Well, something always happens bad for the Lions in Dallas.
Right.
Every time we meet these guys, something's going to go crazy, and it's usually the Zebras who get the blame, or
Right.
sometimes Campbell, but mostly the Zebras. All I can say is that Dak Prescott is not one of my favorite players. He's been around this league for so long. He has not delivered a championship to Uncle Jerry Jones and his big monstrosity known as a stadium. And even though he's got 8 touchdown passes, plus he's ran for 1 touchdown, so he's contributed to 9 touchdowns directly. Dak Prescott does have several interceptions, like you mentioned, Jeremy, even if they both came in different days of the week. All that being said, the Lions have the tools to beat them. Let's just be honest here. We know that they've got the tools to beat them. Dallas has some tools too. They got some offensive weapons. Rico's got what, 221 yards, and Ezekiel Elliott, he's got a minor role, man. He hasn't even ran for 100 yards for the season so far. But that being said, I mean the Lions, we all know they've got the talent. They have to, and I know they'll focus on this game more than anything. I appreciate Jeremy, you bringing out those 4 games that are circled. And obviously, this is going to be a national game. It's a doubleheader day, as they call it, and it won't kick off till 4:25. Yeah, and Jeremy, you and your friends will be rocking and rolling because the Ford Field audience will be loud. Yeah, the fans will be going crazy inside. I'm glad they're having that watch party for you and for other fans. But yeah, I mean, let's face it. I mean, Lions are overdue to beat these guys. I like to see them beat them by 15, 20 points, even if they if they can. Of
Right.
course,
So
one point will win it, but I'm just saying. I mean, they have a potential to roll up the score like they did against Seattle on Monday night.
it's funny you mentioned that because I want to mention the fact that right now the Dallas Cowboys, for the first time in 2 seasons, are 0-2 to start the season at home.
Really?
Wow,
They
yeah.
actually they
Oh,
actually have been averaging 12 and a half penalties per game at home and only 8 on the road, which is why they have their 3-2 record.
well,
Good point.
let's have a little footnote. I think we played around with it last night on Inside the Fiction, but we will do it. So I have a minute or two that I want to get it out. Robert Saleh obviously was let go by the New York Jets yesterday. And, here's a guy that wanted Matthew Stafford or he wouldn't take the job. Well, my goodness. How did that work out, Lions fans? All you had to do was settle on Dan Campbell. That worked out bad for, how did that work out for the Lions fans? If that wasn't enough, I remember when Dan Campbell was an interim coach auditioning for the Miami Dolphins job. How many coaches have they gone through since, Dan Campbell? So let's 6, right? Okay. So let's say the curse of Dan Campbell actually exists with the Miami Dolphins and the curse of Robert Sala. Okay. exist, okay, with the New York Jets, although I think anybody would have a hard time with that job anyways. I really do. That's a tough job, but I don't want to get into that totally. But if you have to settle for Dan Campbell, you have a your first year is a tough year, 13-1, I believe, right? And then the following year was it 9-8? Is that correct? And
Yeah. Yes.
they got off to that terrible start, win
Yeah.
9-8, but they win the last game against the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau, and it was their only time on national TV. And then all of a sudden, how did it work out? They were hungry after that. Folks, Dan Campbell, I'm looking forward to seeing how this thing plays out come Sunday. And it was great. The Lions went out there and sent me a release on the watch party, and I had zero problem putting it up today because I want to make sure there's plenty of reminders out there. It's good that you're going, though, Jeremy.
So 5 times we used Dan Skipper as tackle eligible before that play that caused the whole thing at the end of the game versus Dallas last time.
Right.
I'm saying all 5 times Dan Skipper comes in, Taylor Decker should report as eligible.
Wow. I don't know. We'll see. Remember, we have this show again next week, so I'll have you do a little bit of homework. I sure think the Lions Cowboys game will certainly be at the top of the topic list for sure.
Oh
And
yeah,
and hopefully
definitely.
the Detroit Tigers will continue playing ball. So it's been a pretty good week. Excitement in Motown definitely prevalent there. Once again, I want to. My brother Lonnie, I like to kid around with him from time to time. He said, "One of your hometown, by the way, is Tampa." Yeah, it is. And he said one of your hometown because I've been bouncing around a lot like a pinball machine over the years. My stop's actually Metro Detroit, both Florida markets, Tampa, Fort Lauderdale, and then, of course, I've been in North Carolina as well as Arizona, so I've gotten around a little bit. And I'll tell you, the prelude to that is back to this book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. Talks about all my stops, all my interviews. A picture of Muhammad Ali in there, Tommy Lasorda, my first big interview. It certainly has been a great ride, but I'm not ready for this ride to end yet. And that's why we continue to do this. We appreciate No Filter for having the Motor City Madmouth on the platform. We're certainly working our hard, Jeremy and I and George, to try to build an identity, talking about Motown sports, as well as some of the other people that George Eichhorn is certainly looking to try to bring on future shows as well. We'll announce that at a later date as those commitments become more solid. But meanwhile, I want to thank everybody for joining us in this edition of the Motor City Mad Mouth. Very easily at my book one more time. It is You can get it on Amazon, Kindle, as well as Barnes and Noble. So great job by you guys today. I
Thank
wouldn't
you.
expect anything else from you anyways. But meanwhile, I'm looking forward to see what happens. Obviously, in Metro Detroit, Game 4 tomorrow. We don't know who's going to be pitching for the Tigers, but I believe the Game 1 starter, if I don't know his name offhand, will be pitching for Cleveland. George, maybe you could get that for me really quick. He was the most impressive pitcher that they had in Cleveland 7-0 win as well. So I don't have it off the top of my hand. Hopefully George will have it in a moment. We know the Tigers could be potentially going with a bullpen day, and if this game goes back to Cleveland, then there's no question in my mind it'll be Tarek Skubal in the winner take all. The plan is if AJ Hinch has anything to say with it, it doesn't get to Saturday, and they don't have to take that 2.5 hour half hour bus ride. Did you find the name, George, or not?
Yeah, BB.
Okay.
Tanner
Yeah,
BB.
he's
Yeah, he 4 2/3 innings in Game 1.
And there you go. There you have it. And he looked awfully good on Saturday. So, meanwhile, I want to thank once again everybody for joining us on this edition of the Motor City Man Mouse Show. On behalf of George Eichhorn and Smoking Jeremy Ballrick, my name is Scott Morganroth. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week on the same station. Good night. Have a great week, everybody, and everybody in Florida and whoever is affected by Hurricane Milton, please be safe. Good night, everybody.